Meet Brandin Bryant and Dr. Desaree Festa, two inspiring voices at the intersection of sports, mental wellness, and personal growth. Brandin Bryant is a first-time author and former professional football defensive end, having played for multiple NFL teams before retiring with the Buffalo Bills. He's on a mission to spread positivity and mindfulness to young readers using his platform to inspire the next generation. Joining him is Dr. Desaree Festa, known as Dr. Des, a team sports psychologist for professional athletes. With a deep commitment to mental wellness and performance, Dr. Des supports NFL players and coaches with personalized strategies to enhance resilience and thrive both on and off the field. Together, they offer a powerful conversation on mindset, motivation, and what it truly means to lead with purpose. Hi, everyone. We are so excited to have some very special guests for this week's episode of Life Happens. Many of you might not know this about myself and my mom, but my mom particularly, that she is a huge sports fan, she has so much sports knowledge and just is a big sports freak. So it's really exciting for both of us, but I think especially for my mom to have today's guests on the show. We have Brandin Bryant, who is a former NFL athlete and also a college athlete, and we have sports psychologist Dr. Des Festa joining us today. So hi, guys.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
I'm so excited because I know this is a little bit of a different conversation than what we're used to having. I mean, we bring on all sorts of people and discuss mental health, mindfulness practices, what works for people. But I mean, I don't want to speak for you, Mom, but I think you're personally excited to talk about mental health and what it means for athletes, but also just people who are in high pressure situations like athletes and what that looks like, and really de-stigmatizing the conversation around mental health in some of these fields.
Absolutely, Michelle. I am so excited to have Brandin and Dr. Desaree here. I've been thinking about this for months because it is such a passion of mine.
Yeah.
Sports has been in my life my whole life. My dad played football in college at university, so football was my thing. And then I spent 20, 30 years in Indiana. So Indiana basketball was my thing. So sports is really in my blood, and to really be able to have both of you on as long as I've been working with athletes and working with Brandin over when he was in university. So it's been very cool to be a part of sports in that intricate way. And even though we don't talk about sports, and I think a lot of people may not even know that I'm such a passionate sports freak, as Michelle called me. It's so important to me because mental health is my thing as well. So the idea of bringing mental health together with athletes, because I love them so much, is a dream come true. So to have both of you on is very exciting, and I'm so happy to be having this conversation with you too.
Thank you.
So before we dive into the conversation, since I don't think a lot of people do really know your passion for sports and especially passion for athletes, and then this can kind of start to tell the story of how we know Brandin. Can you tell everyone and the listeners how you got to know Brandin and what you've been doing with athletes for over a decade now?
Yeah, I think it's been over a decade. Well, at the university, I was doing a lot of workshops and, meditation classes and mindfulness and self-care and self-help over there since probably 2003, 2004. So really a couple decades at least. And I remember one day with
most of my life.
All of your life, but I mean, just really getting into giving workshops and teaching the external world. I stayed a student for many, many years before I started teaching it. And I would happen to be at the university one day, and I go to all the games there, and the new football coach said, "Would you like to do some mindfulness and meditation and mental health or mental wellness care with the athletes?" I said, "I would love to." And he said, "Well, why don't we start with football?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, that would be a dream come true." And then I think you chimed in later and said, "Oh gosh, my mom would love to be a football coach in a former life." So it started with that, and Brandin was one of the first. I think you were the first class of athletes that I'd ever done anything with. And I remember being scared. I mean, I've been doing this for 40 years, but I remember being scared thinking, I'm this, I felt like a little girl because the other football players and the basketball players and all. I felt like, what am I going to teach these athletes? Because they're so. I've always revered athletics and I've always revered athletes because I think you put everything out there. And so anyway, it intimidated me at first, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to go in and talk to 100 and some football players and coaches and all of that. What am I going to say to them that's going to really, mean something and actually feel like it's a part of everything that you were doing? And it was your class, and you in particular, Brandin, were just so welcoming and Brandin asked me so many questions. I remember at the end I said, if anyone wants to come up later, and you and I feel like we clicked right off the bat. You were so interested, and so I felt like, really energetic and hungry about what could you do to be better, to be more resilient and confident in all the things that we talked about. So it started with that. I was so excited, and I remember leaving there thinking, wow, I just spoke to 100 and some football players. This is the most exciting day of my life. So it started with that, and I think you and I have stayed in touch for a long time, and for a very long time since then. And it's been really a privilege to call you a friend and to know you. It was so much fun, and you really helped me kind of break down some of the fear I might have had of speaking to athletes, which wasn't my thing at the time. So I've always appreciated our friendship. So that's how it started. And now here we are.
Here
Well, and
we
I think,
are.
Michelle, you and I
Brandin,
did a whole talk, last year to Women's Athletic Association and Women's Athletics in Indiana. So it's kind of full circle, fulfilling something that means a lot to me, and helping mental health, mental wellness, anything that I can do to help athletes not only be extraordinary on the field, but actually live their lives in the most profound, extraordinary way, so that it kind of all goes together, the inside and the outside, the external world and internal world. It really matters to me. So it's good.
I love it. Brandin, can you talk a little bit about your experience with learning mindfulness, and then how that helped you in your career, and then how you crossed paths with Dr.
Yeah,
Des?
so I would say it was just perfect timing. So when Barb came through to speak at to our team at FAU at the time, I was going through my first or second, major knee injury. So I just tore my ACL for the first or second time. I can't remember if it was the first or second, but it was that time in my life where I knew what I was doing wasn't working and I needed to try something else. And I had this huge, just willingness to try something new. And then Barb came in, like I said, it was perfect timing because usually, just like most 19, 20-year-olds at the time, sad to say, when a speaker comes in, it's just your mind is just somewhere else. You got school to worry about, football, everything that's going on.
That's what I thought was going
That's
to
why I was
And that's
happen.
scared.
usually, and that's 90% of the time that's how it is. Even Dr. Des will probably agree on what she does, but I uh I was just completely open to trying something new. I had just had surgery and I was kind of immobile, so I couldn't work on my physical like I wanted to. Like I'm somewhat of a gym freak. Like I'm always working out. I'm always on the field, always trying to improve myself. But at this time, I was limited into what I could do. So Barb came in and she did a great job of just meeting us exactly where we were. I remember what Barb said was, we're going to meditate, close your eyes. We're going to do this. And the thing that she said is stuck with me to this day, even when I, don't feel like meditating and breathing. She was like, it could just be a minute, because from my impression, I'm thinking, okay, if I'm going to meditate, it's something that's going to take 40 minutes, an hour, 20 minutes, whatever it may be. And Barb was like, you can do it for a minute, and then you'll grow from there. So that's exactly what we did as a group. We meditated for a minute or so, and then I got home and I did the same thing, day after day after day. And I remember just the shift in my life from going to thinking like, that was one of the only times in my life where I actually, felt sorry for myself. Like things have happened to me in life, but, I usually would just, get over it or something else would pop up. But at that point I was, that was literally worst case scenario had happened. A knee injury like that, my dreams, my goals were to go to the NFL. And at that point, I thought that because I tore my ACL, that it wasn't going to happen. So by being able to meditate, being able to live in the moment, see where I was, and seeing the control and the power that I had in my life, it was truly, transformative, and it began to affect me in other ways, and I began to, share with other people, and I was able to use that to, like I said, to be able to be introduced into, the mental health space and the mindfulness space, And that gave me the willingness to take the taboo-ness out of it, where, where I come from, and many other people, when you think mental health and meditation, you kind of, it just seems like, something kind of off or kind of weird, something that, a man shouldn't do. But that opened my that opened my
Exactly.
mind to see, hey, this is actually exactly what I should be doing. That's what everyone else should be doing. So, later in life, when I get to meet Dr. Des, and, now she's on, another side of that, which is sports psychologist. And for my interactions with Barb, like I said, I was much more open to being acceptive to hearing what Dr. Des had to say and how that could help me, personally and professionally. So, whenever someone asks me, how did I become such a mental health, proponent, advocate, or just, someone who believes in it so much, I always, circle back to you too. So it's great to, have you two in the same room, and it
I love
definitely
it.
changed my life. So I'm forever grateful for you too.
Thank you, Brandon.
That's so amazing. I think you have such a powerful story because it is true. I mean, I think in our, in 2025, talking about mental health has become less of a stigma, but I think even still, it's not always easy to talk about mental struggles. And Dr. Des, I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about your journey towards becoming a sports psychologist and how you have been able to break down some of those barriers, especially when talking to groups like, players like Brandon and, maybe men who aren't always open to talking about how they're feeling or mental struggles. What are some approaches that you've found that have really given an access point to people who might need it the most?
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking all that, Michelle. So, the way I started off as a sports psychologist is I actually learned about the field of sports psychology my junior year of high school. So, when I was in middle school,
Oh
I
my
already
gosh.
decided I wanted to go into psychology. And then I just grew up playing lots of sports. I just loved participating in sports, how much about life you can learn through sports. And so I was just really interested in that. And my mom is actually taking psychology courses at our local university and overheard a professor talking about the field of sports psychology. Didn't know much, just came home, said, hey, this might be something you're interested in that would combine both your passions. And from there, I looked into it. Now, there wasn't a lot of information out there on sports psychology. There wasn't someone I could point to and be like, this is the profession I want to go into, this is the model.
Yeah.
Really weren't quite the models. Even though the profession's been around for a while, it's really been behind the scenes, very much so.
Yeah.
So I did my master's at Florida State, my master's in sports psych at Florida State, and then I went into my counseling psych PhD to help athletes when it comes to the mental performance and the mental health side of things. So if you could combine it all together, that is one way to get that buy-in and decrease stigma, is when you just see that the mental space is all a competitive advantage, and it's about being proactive in your sports, but then also your life. So after graduating, I started working and specializing with collegiate athletes, professional athletes, and then really just focused in on the professional athletes and organizations over time in that space. And to answer your question of how can you destigmatize it, it's really just showing that the mental space is a game changer. It's a competitive advantage, especially when you get to the professional level. Brandon knows this. Everyone at the professional level is physically talented and gifted. But really, what is the separator is the mental component. Who could be super resilient, who can overcome adversity, who has spent time working on their mindset, who has prepared to handle different challenges, not just physically on the field, but also mentally. Those are the separators, really, when it comes to having a long, happy, successful career. And Barb, as you talk about your experience with Brandon, is exactly the experience I had with him years later in
I
the
love it.
professional world. Is Brandon was always super eager and open and wanted to learn more. Was always asking questions, sending me podcasts, reading books. And so the Brandon you described back at university is the Brandon I saw at the pro life. And he talked so much about you, Barb, that you just did such an amazing job of
Oh,
sending a good foundation for him to continue his curiosity and his passion and his interest in the mindset space. And then that's where I was so blessed and privileged to come along in his journey as well.
oh, I love that so much. Yeah, Brandon is. I think you are, Brandon, the perfect, or not perfect, but the ideal. That's a better word. From what Dr. Des is saying, exactly everything that you just said is so, like, I want to jump out of my chair because I just love the work that you're doing so much, because it is that important to help these athletes. If we're focusing on athletes today, really see that they can be so good on and off the field, and off the field is where you really can excel big time. And I think for me, it's always been, I remember in working with Brandon, but also in teaching all the sports that I've done over the years, is that how can you actually take everything that you said, Dr. Des, and then also be able to take your mind and be the boss of it and really be in the moment. And I think for me, what I've noticed in life with everyone that I work with, but especially with athletes, if you can't forget what happened this moment and come into this moment, it's just almost impossible to be as successful as you desire to be. So this idea of, I love destigmatizing it, that meditation or mindfulness or self-awareness or whatever the words are, the buzzwords are that make it feel accessible to whoever is actually practicing or working, is so important, because it really is just, how can I just be present to my life in this moment so that I can be the best that I can be. They train so much physically, as you said, and to be able to actually bring the two together, knowing that the mind has to come along and really is one of the more important assets. So I
Yeah, and
love it.
Barb, you would appreciate this too, that being present is a skill. And it's
Yes.
so critical in sports to forget the last play, not thinking ahead to the outcome of the next play or the game, but to be exactly where your feet are. Sometimes it's easier said than done.
Yes. I just want to give Brandon one more plug. I remember it was when you had torn your ACL for, I think, the second time. But you were so, even though it was one of your lowest moments, and I don't even sure you even shared that with me, your vulnerability is so amazing. But it was one of the moments that I, I think we talked a little bit about how fear, more than just being one of your lowest moments, I felt like fear. And how can you overcome that fear, knowing that you have the potential, you have the ability, you have not only the physical ability, but you were really working on your mind at that time, which I think was everything. How do you overcome the fear of being hurt? And so you don't go to that future, this is not going to be the career that I decided I wanted it to be. Oh my gosh, now what? You really stayed very present. So that mindfulness and being present, way even back then, Brandon, you got it. Because I think, as Dr. Des said, you were so eager and so open and willing to learn. So we're all in each other's fan clubs.
100%. I think what's so interesting to me is, and what you just said, Dr. Des, the importance for athletes, but for anyone, because mom, you say this so often in a lot of our workshops, just to the general public, is, being present and using that phrase, be where your feet are. You say so often, mom, that even though mental health and talking about emotions and mental struggles isn't always taboo, but especially with athletes, the concept of being present is such a known concept for athletes. Like, they know that they have to have their head in the game in order to be successful. But I think the topic that you both touched upon is that, what do you do when, maybe you make a bad play and set your team back, or miss miss the field goal, or drop the catch, or miss the tackle, Brandon, because I know you're defense. How do you get over or move past, you know, what be perceived as a failure, to keep your head in the game, especially when times are tough? And, of course, this is through the lens of sports, but this is for life in general too. We all make mistakes. We all have difficult times. What are some of the mindset shifts, or how can we, accept the mistakes that we've made and be able to be where our feet are in the moment, to know that this is where our power lies? Brandon, if you want to speak to your
Yeah,
experience first.
I love to speak on that because I had a bunch of completely different experiences with that exact thought process. And I realized that my relationship with that thought process was, just like we said, football is a mental game. So my relationship with that process directly, impacted my level of play. So I'll go back to college and then to the NFL. And I spoke with Barb about this before. When I was in college, right, it was much more, throughout the middle and the end part of college, right? It's just that curve of, you're learning, and then, you feel like you're on top, and then it goes back down when you get to the NFL, then it comes back up. But I can remember at either point, either career, college, or, the NFL, that my best times were when I was, playing in the moment, not necessarily worried about, the bad plays or the good plays, but, and, Dr. Des will be able to probably sharpen up my thoughts a little bit, but I was at the point where I had a goal. I had a fine goal and I was chasing something. Whereas I'm trying not to mess up. So at the point, whatever point where I was, playing and I was trying to be perfect, then it's so hard to have that level of neutrality because you're trying so hard to be perfect that if you feel yourself go down, you feel like you're playing catch up. And maybe if you go too high up, you
Love
may,
that.
start taking risks that you shouldn't take. But I could just remember my best games, my best years in college and in the NFL. It was always when I was just, I had a goal and I was chasing something where I was like, hey, I'm going to get 4 tackles this game or a sack or whatever it may be, versus I'm going out there and I'm trying so hard to be perfect, trying so hard not to mess up that I could just feel myself, realizing each mistake I made and kind of thinking about the repercussions of it. Because, as you know, once you get to the NFL, it's not like college. Or in college, you get there. At least when I was playing, you had 4 years. You had a 4-year scholarship, and there was really nothing they could do as long as you had good grades. So you're able to kind of keep that level of neutrality. Just by chance, I guess. But when you get to the NFL, that's not the case because every mistake you make, you might not have a job tomorrow. No matter who, yeah, it's so cutthroat. No
Cutthroat.
matter who you are, every mistake is so just overwatched and over just analyzed. So myself and any player that has ever played, when the stakes are so high, it's like you get to that point and you mess up and you're thinking about it. Then all of a sudden you're playing catch up, and then the next play you mess up again, and now all of a sudden you're thinking about a mistake you made in the first quarter, in the fourth quarter, and you might not even realize it till you go watch film the next day. And I could just say that the games I had where I played so well, it wasn't even a thought. I messed up and I
Yeah.
wasn't even worried about it. I was like, hey, I'll fix that tomorrow. So I think the ability, and I've played with some great teammates that always talked about just staying neutral. And I think the ability to stay neutral, never get too high, never get too low, is a priceless skill that you have to develop.
Yeah, I
I
think the
think
key
too.
stuff that Brandon is talking about here that I want to make sure that we highlight is the fact that Brandon's talking about how he sets his goals, and how you set your goals and your expectations for yourself can really impact how you're going to overcome that adversity, that mistake, that challenging situation. And Brandon's giving me a great example of focusing in on the process more than the outcomes or the
Yeah.
results, because that process focus helps you dial into that present moment. And then Brandon's
Yes.
also talking about finding that zone of optimal performance. Like, where do you need to be mentally and physically to be right within your zone so you can be as mentally sharp as possible in that. Some guys have to be super calm and relaxed. Other guys have to be really hyped. But finding your sweet spot is really important, and that's something I work on with athletes, is finding that sweet spot so they're in their zone, and what do you need to get yourself back into the zone when you get knocked out of it. So what is that reset routine for you?
I could not love that
I love
more.
that
Yeah, I
you
was going to
say
say,
that.
I'm so excited. I'll let you know.
Oh no, go
That
ahead.
is so
No.
brilliant. I mean, so brilliant. I feel like finding your own way and knowing, I just love what you said. What do you need? I find that so many people have no idea what they need. I just love that so much, Dr. Des. That is just, oh, it's everything. When you know what you need, then you can surround yourself with the things and the people and the work and the goal setting and all the things. Then you can surround yourself with all of that. Because I remember back in when we were going through your injury, Brandon, and was your ACL and all that. And I remember the people around, because in the university, and there was a coach that came up to me and said, oh, "Poor Brandon." And I said, "What? What do you mean, poor Brandon?" "Oh, he's such a phenomenal player. Do you know?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I just don't know what's going to happen." I said, "I don't know what's going to happen either, but I know he's going to make it. I know it's all going to be fine." It's like finding that, what do you need so that you're not caught up in, because other people around you, I think, I always say, we take on the behaviors or the energy of the people that we spend the most time with. And I think when we can really look at what's around us, then we can get more clear on what we need for ourselves and block out the noise that's on the external world. I love that so much, Dr. Des.
Yeah, and a lot of times my role is helping them, giving them the time and space to figure out what they need. A lot of times athletes like Brandin know what they
Yeah.
need. They just need that time and space to reflect and increase their self-awareness and figure out what those techniques, those strategies are. So my role is to come alongside them. They're an expert in in themselves. They're with themselves 24/7. No one knows themselves better than them because they're with them all the time. And then I just come along as a partner who understands the mental skills and space when it comes to elite athletes and performers. And together we just form a good partnership.
I love that.
I love that. And I think, too, what was so interesting, Brandin, hearing you speak and then Dr. Des affirming it, was kind of a level of perfectionism that can happen with athletes where you have to be at the top of your game. And if you don't hit the marks or, reach your goals or perform at a certain level, you could see how easy it is to kind of fall completely off and then snowball. You're thinking about the last play that you missed on this play, and then you make another misplay, and then it just kind of, you know, one after the other. And I love that idea of thinking more about your goals and what you want for yourself and what, to use your words, Dr. Des, what works for you. Because, and we talk about this so often in our work with just regular people, one person's meditation and mindfulness practice might look totally different than another. My mom used to meditate for an hour in the morning and an hour at night, and I think we all know that's not totally accessible for most people or practical for most people. So it's so important, Dr. Des, I love that you are giving these players the opportunity to find what works well for them, and encouraging that it doesn't have to look like anybody else's. But in that spirit of, being present and knowing that there's always another opportunity to make another right action or make another play, can you talk about how resilience plays into your world, Brandin as a player and Dr. Des as a support team for these athletes? Because I can only imagine, I was thinking about this as you both were talking. I used to play tennis, and I was pretty competitive in middle school and high school, and I really loved the sport. But I will admit, and mom, no offense, because this was
None
when I really
taken.
thought about my own mental health, my mental game totally took me out. Like, I would become a monster on the court if I double faulted. Like, I would have a tantrum. And so I can understand and relate to athletes to where you could be a physically capable athlete with skill and drive, but the mental aspect can totally tank your game. So where can you guys talk about what it looks like to cultivate resilience, or maybe even, I don't know, whatever words you would use, but like forgiveness for yourselves if, you do make a mistake? And especially, I played tennis for myself, so it wasn't necessarily a team sport, but I can only imagine the pressure playing at a high level for teams that expect that level. How do you overcome those difficulties when, you drop the ball, pun intended?
I think the the most important part, right, when you're playing at a high level, Division 1 or in a National Football League, any professional sport, is that your competition is so high. So every time you go against someone, you're going against someone either just as good, or maybe you're a little better, or maybe someone a little better than you. So the odds are, you're going to lose sometimes, you're going to win sometimes, and it's going to go back and forth. And you almost have to have a level of, I don't want to use the wrong word here. Is it hubris? Maybe that's the word, right? Where it's just like you don't really you kind of just like living in a state where it's like you're ignorant to what's going on, right? Like maybe I'm not as good as I think I am, but it doesn't matter. I'm gonna perform and I'm gonna act like I am as good as I see myself. And I can, go back to personally, my story when I was in high school, not having any offers, being in the NFL and being cut multiple times. Every time you get cut, someone's basically looking at you and they're saying, "Hey, you're not good enough to be here. You're not good enough to play in the NFL. You're not good enough to be on this team. You got to go home." And every time you're in high school and you don't get a scholarship offer, after, maybe going to a camp or speaking to a college coach. That's that coach telling you you're not good enough to come to this school. So you have to have that level of ignorance to say, hey, I don't know what this guy's saying, but I'm the best thing out here. So, I don't, like I said, I don't know if it's just ignorance or just a wild self-belief, but you have to have that, and you have to believe in yourself. And when it gets hard, you have to find a way to believe even more.
Yeah,
I love
Michelle,
that.
the fact that you play tennis, tennis is tough because when you are on that court, you are everything for yourself as a tennis player. You are your coach,
Yep.
you are your teammate,
Yeah.
unless you're playing doubles. Um, it's
Yep.
it's you and your mental game completely on your own as a tennis player. So there's a lot of mental resilience in the sport of tennis for
Yep.
sure. Um,
It's a wild
it
ride.
is, yes. I've worked with a lot of elite tennis players in the past, and so I understand exactly what you're talking about. And what Brandon here is talking about is resilience. And through all his adversity and challenges, he really saw them as opportunities for growth and to get better. Because if he didn't, he wouldn't have gotten to the space that he's been in. So really, how you perceive challenges is key in building mental resilience. Now, back in the day, sports psychology
Mm.
used to use the term mental toughness, and we have moved beyond that and we've moved towards resilience. So, the fact
Mm.
that you're using the word resilience is really important. It's about building up a
Love it.
mental toolbox so you have all these different tools and skills. So, when you hit a challenge, when you hit adversity, you could pull a different tool from that toolbox to help you get through that challenging time. It's more about creating like psychological flexibility than having one technique or one skill or one way of thinking about a situation. It's really having a lot of different ways to adapt and adjust to the situations that you're facing.
I love that
I
so
love
much.
that. And that the flexibility is what's so important for anyone in life, regardless of what profession you're in, because you never know what life is going to throw your way. And sometimes a tool that you rely on might not get you through a difficult time, and having that open-mindedness and flexibility is crucial, especially these days when life
Yeah.
is pretty tough.
And
So I love
to
that.
Brandon's point, no, maybe at one point that perfectionistic thought got you so far. But sometimes it doesn't work. And letting go of the perfectionism and then creating a goal more of excellence or growth
Yeah.
can serve you better than that rigid thought process of I have to be perfect and everything has to go right, which a lot of times very talented collegiate athletes could get away with. But when they hit the pro level, we have to adjust the way of thinking about your performance, and what you're shooting for is important. And then also with that old school mental toughness mindset, it was all about suppressing your thoughts and your
Yeah.
feelings and pretending that
Mm.
stuff isn't happening. Now, with the mental resilience research and the growth mindset research and the post traumatic growth research, there's so much research in different areas. It's about
I love
leaning
it.
in to that discomfort and moving forward with it and moving through it than pretending it's not happening or suppressing it or ignoring it.
Mm.
I love that so much. There's so
That's
much
so great.
research has changed our lives, I think, especially in the mental wellness arena. Knowing
Yeah.
all of the things that you're talking about, that Jill Bolte Taylor, that changed my life in the teaching that I do with not just athletes, with humans, like Michelle was saying, that a feeling lasts 90 seconds in the body unless we choose to use our thoughts to continue writing a story about what it is we're feeling, because we weren't really taught to feel. We were taught to
Mm,
just push through. Don't
mm.
don't don't stop. Just push through. It's okay. Oh, you made a mistake. Go. Keep going. Keep going. And now, the research in the mental wellness field of the idea of feel your feelings, sort it out. Don't let your mind write a story about it, and really just start thinking, feeling the feelings. Okay, now what next based on how I'm feeling right now, so that we can understand what is the right next action that we need to take. And I just love, Michelle and I spend a lot of time redefining and repurposing words that need to be used. And I love that you're taking away toughness.
Yeah.
Like we all are. It's resilience. I couldn't love this conversation more. I could just listen to you guys talk forever, because it's so true. It's everything that needs to happen, especially in the mental wellness space. And I
Yeah.
just am really, really grateful for that so much, because it does absolutely parallel with the lives we're living on the outside world. Not that athletics and sports and all that isn't in the outside world important to us, but so is what's next, and what are we going to do next, and how do we want to really live, the best life that we came here to live. And everything that you're teaching and everything that you're helping these young athletes see is everything, because Brandin, you're still in, you're in the major prime of your life. It's like sports is not going to be the end. And that was the only other thing I wanted to say. So often when people would say to me, but what if something happens that you can't come back from in that same form or in that same way? I always say it's not the end of the story. It may be let's pivot to what is next, because it's never over. Your story's never over until you're over, or until you decided that it's over. And that idea that things that happen to us and what people think and say never have the power to define who we are. So I'm curious. I guess we came together, Brandin, during, there was certainly social media and all of that, but it's so rampant right now. And what always, I don't want to say breaks my heart, but I love athletes so much and I love sports so much when I see, an athlete sending out a tweet or responding in a way that I think is not necessarily going to be in their best interest in the world, or even in their own sport. How has social media played a role? Maybe Dr. Des, you could answer this, and Brandin, how has social media played a role in like losing your temper a little bit, or getting frustrated that someone tweeted something at me or did something and then I respond back really fast? For me, that's been the greatest teaching that I will love to leave people. Take a pause and really think before you act. And have you seen that play out in your work? Either one of you,
So
yeah.
definitely, I've seen it, and what I would tell myself, in that situation is, the old quote that everyone says is true, and the more you get into it, the more you see it. The internet is undefeated. You cannot beat the internet. You can't out argue it. You can't prove your point. You're never gonna win. So you have a bad play, and someone may not even think it's a bad play, or it might not even be a bad play. Your coach might be telling you, "Hey, that's actually a good job. This is exactly what we're looking for." But the guy at home who is playing Monday morning quarterback, he thinks you did something completely wrong. And as soon as he tweets it, then obviously, it goes on to spiral. So now all of a sudden you got 50 people who you can't talk to, who are disrespecting you and you telling you all these things that you've done wrong. And now you feel like, as a person, I have to go out there and prove them wrong, or type to each and every one of them, send them a message explaining myself. And it's a zero sum game. You can't win it. There's no point of engaging in it. And I realized that at my point, just from talking to teammates that I've played with, who are pro bowlers, who are at the top of the league, top of their craft. And when they would tell me they struggled with these things, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, you're a Pro Bowl player. You're doing so good. You're the best player on the team, and I can look over, in a meeting and see this person searching their name and going through it, and getting a little agitated. So I just, I think it's a game that you can't win. So the best thing to do is ignore it. And like I said, just realize that, for better or worse, good or bad, these people have no clue what they're talking about. There's a website out there called PFF, and, players put so much value into it, but coaches and GMs might as well, but usually they don't. And I remember we were playing against the New Orleans Saints, right? And PFF actually ranked me as the highest graded defensive player on my team, but my coach did it. so what does that tell you? Like, my coach told me I had an okay game. PFF told me I graded at like 95%. So, like I said, for better or worse, it doesn't do you any good to go out there and read that. It doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't matter.
Either it's going to make you feel good, or if it's going to make you feel bad. But if you allow social media to validate your feelings in either way, you can't stop it when it goes the other way. If it makes you feel so good, you can't stop it when they're talking bad about you. And all of a sudden, you think you're the worst player in the world.
Yeah.
I think as
Go ahead,
no,
Mark.
please go ahead. No, I was just saying, I think as human beings, we are drawn to pleasing people, and we care what other people think of us and all of that. So I could only imagine in the sports arena, it could be really drastic. So I see all of the things that, are tweeted or that said. And I love what you just said. I will often watch a game on mute. I don't need to hear what all those people are saying. And I actually teach it in my courses and stuff. I say, you don't, I want to know the facts. I want to know what's actually happened, but I don't really care at all about what other people's opinions about the facts are. And I think that's where I try to help people see, just care about your opinion about what just happened. And it doesn't really matter. So I love that you're telling people just ignore it. Just really, yes, it may hurt in the moment, but it isn't true. Usually 99% of what is out there isn't true, or 99% of the things that we think about ourselves, especially if it's negative or defeating or going to put us in a place where we can't be resilient, is not true. So I really give you guys a lot of credit, because I can imagine that it's difficult in this self-help arena with all of the external noise and social media. And Dr. Desiree?
Yeah, when it comes to social media piece, like Brandon is saying, it's control the controllables. That's a key part. That's something you hear in sport a lot, control the controllables. You can't control what's happening on
I
social
love it.
media or what people's opinions are. And if you really focus on that and give it a lot of power, you're thinking of thousands or millions of people's opinions that matter. And that could feel like tons of pressure. But really, it's important to dial
Yeah.
in and just focus in on you, your process, and who opinions really matter. Maybe that's a trusted coach or your teammates versus everyone out there on social media. And something I've done with athletes in the past is do a social media detox. Hey, let's shut down the account. Let's not look, especially if we're going into playoffs or a critical time in their season. Let's just cut it out. Let's not even have the temptation to hit that icon and swipe and look.
I love that so much.
It's so good because it, even just as you were talking just now, Dr. Des, like thinking about hundreds or hundreds of thousands of people having something to say about you, that's just
And it
extremely
could be tough.
overwhelming.
Like,
And
it's not uncommon for professional athletes, especially when you're on a big stage, for people to slide into your DMs and say some of the
Yes.
most horrific things.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah,
it's definitely a challenging space to be in. And the normal population doesn't necessarily have to navigate that on that
No.
scale and that
No.
magnitude. Will they go
no.
into
No.
work and they have cameras in there and then thousands or millions of people are watching and commenting on what you do?
Yeah.
So it's a really unique experience to the professional life or if you're in the public space.
Dr. Des, I just had a
What would
Michelle.
you
I just had one question. I
say?
just wanted to ask you: have you seen
Sure.
a transfer in that? Then, as athletes, you're working with this with them in their athletic position, but then as they transition out of, football or basketball or whatever sport it is, into the world of what's next, have you seen them be able to be just as mindful, really thinking that, what other people think and say is not my business, basically. Let me really stay true to who I am and what I learned, by, you know, speaking with you and working with you. Have you seen a transfer of that? Because that would be music to my ears, to see that could be really the goal, would be to transfer that into then your ordinary life and what it is you're going to do after sports.
Yeah, that transition of life after sports can be a unique one. One that maybe the athlete or player hasn't faced yet. So
Yeah.
equipping them with tools and skills to help them with that transition is really important. And going back to that social media piece, let's say it was a player who paid a lot of attention to that public notoriety and status, and then they transition. They
Yes.
now they're out of their sport, and all those voices start to quiet down. They're not the attention. That could be a hard transition. So that's why we want them to focus on the voices that matter most while they're playing to
Yeah.
help with that transition
Love that.
out into their next career.
Love it.
I love that. That was actually what I was just
Oh,
going to ask about. Brandon, we since we've known you for so long, we've seen all of, the seasons and chapters of your life, going from college to professional sports. Can you talk a little bit about what it has been like for you to go from chapter to chapter? And specifically, too, I think if you're open to talking about, I know going from college to the professional arena, you had some challenges and you had to really, you know, be resilient and keep those goals in mind to make it to the NFL. And then can you talk about too what it's been like pivoting away from professional sports and just how those pivots in your life have played a role in and what you've used in your mental toolbox, to use Dr. Dez's terms of knowing that or maintaining your self-worth and your goals as the external world has changed.
Yeah. This would probably be a very long-winded answer, but I
No,
got,
We
that
love
was a
it.
lot.
but
That was a good question,
yeah,
Michelle.
a great question. Um,
I
Well,
love it.
I mean, I have the privilege of knowing you as a person, so I've known your journey, and it is an amazing story. And so I think everyone else would love to hear it
yeah,
too.
well, let me unpack that in a couple of different ways. And one, well, two, I'll say something that both Barb and Dr. Des said. Um, I remember Barb told me, and I tell her this all the time. Barb told me this. I remember when I was I was getting ready for the combine pro day, and I was talking to Barb, and somehow it came up what I want to do after football. And I remember telling Barb at the time, I was like, yeah, I want to play, and I want to open up some 7-Elevens and this and all that. And she was like, well, you might not want to do that, later on, but if that's something you want to do, then you should go for it. And then somewhere along the line, she told me that football isn't your purpose, it's your passion. And flash forward, 10, 11 years later, I'm talking to Dr. Des and we're talking about, the transition out of football. And she pulled out this saucer with a whole bunch of butter tablets on it. And she was telling me, she said, I think that you're doing well in this transition. And she used the butter as, different sections of your identity. And she asked me how much of my identity that I put into football. And, we measured it down to like, different pieces of butter. And it came down to it that I never put much of my identity, into football actually. And I think some of that was, from that conversation I had with Barb 10 years prior. And another piece of that was just how my career shaped out, right? So tore my ACL once, saw a life without football. Tore my ACL twice. Okay, might not ever play football again. Go to the NFL, wasn't drafted. Oh, maybe I won't be playing football tomorrow. Maybe I'm done playing football. Go to the NFL, get cut 8, 9, 10 times. Every time I'm cut, it's a different experience. And I learned something new about myself every time, where to the point, the ninth, 10th time I got cut, well, probably like the fourth time I got cut, I realized that, football is a small portion of my life. And, this is just a business. It's nothing personal. And I can do so many other things and I can impact so many more people in football. It's just a small portion where I was able to be so good at it and reach that top level, 1% of 1% because of the effort that I put into it, the drive that I had and the skills that I learned that aren't unique to football. If I take these things that I have learned and acquired, these different skills that I developed, and I put them in any other part of life. And when I go talk to, high school kids and college age kids and, little league kids, this is what I tell them. If you put this time that you've put into football, into anything else, you can be successful. And another thing I tell them is, the freshmen that are going to college, if you have 4 years to do something, which you have 4 years to accomplish your goals to play sport, if you have 4 years to do anything, if I was to dedicate the next 4 years of my life into being the governor of Nebraska or the governor of Florida or the mayor of Boca or the mayor of Omaha, I'm pretty sure I could get very close or I could do it. But I would have to take it very serious. I would have to believe in myself. All the things that gave me the opportunity to play in the NFL, I have to take into the next part of my life. And another thing that was able to help me was just realizing that the things, I'm kind of backtracking here and saying the same thing, but the things that I liked about football aren't unique to football. Um, I like being around people. I like helping people. I like being in a team environment. I like being in an environment where there is no ceiling, right? There's nothing telling me when I go to work as a professional football player how good I can get today. There's nothing telling me now as a children's book author and someone going into the financial services industry. There's no ceiling to say how good of a book I can write or how many books I can sell or the things that I can do in the financial service industry. There's no ceiling. So I realized that is what really drew me to football, right? Is that I had that ability to go to work. I had the ability to prove myself and to improve on something every day. But the unique thing that I do tell people that is unique to football that is difficult to replicate outside of football is the connection between the mind and the body. Because those other things I just listed for the most part are, strictly mental. But in football, you're being pushed to your limits physically and mentally every day. And that's another thing. And Barb, I told you this a while ago, and Dr. Des, I told you as well. That's one thing that I love so much about public speaking. It's just every day you go and there's something to improve on. it feels like a game. Like even, Barb, I don't know how Barb got nervous to come talk to us. Like I think the same thing. Like, why am I nervous talking to this group of second graders? And it's like you feel these like pre-game jitters when you're going to speak to a crowd, no matter who you're speaking to. So just for me, any advice I would have to someone out there who's transitioning, find out what those things are that you love so much about the sport that you're playing, and then you'll realize that it's not unique to that sport at all. You just been doing it so long, and those are the places that you felt those feelings that you think it's unique to that place, but it's really not.
I love that so much, Brandon. Let me tell you, I think we get those feelings of the little fear or nervousness because we care so much. I know for
Yeah.
me, I care so much. It's not really about the, oh my gosh, I got to do a good job. I've got to make sure they like me. It's really, I care so much. I have this one moment in time that I can make a difference in the things that I know about life. And you care so much. Like, I have so many goosebumps from what you just said. A little bit of tears may come out because it's so extraordinary. You always have this attitude of, I can do this. I can do that. I've got this. It's really a passion inside of you because you do care so much. You love being with people. That is so clear. You love being with people. The books that you've written already. I mean, I will never forget you coming over after you had transitioned out. One of the first times you came out of the NFL, you coming over and said, I wanted to read my book to you. And I said, oh my gosh, you wrote a book. That's amazing, Brandon. He said, yeah, I like to write children's books. And I said, oh, fantastic. And he said, I've written about 12 of them already, but let me read the first one or whatever it was. And I'm sitting there, Michelle and I, and Yaz was with us. And I'm like, what? You've written how many books have you kind of started to write and you're finishing this one and finishing that one. And you said something, everything you said was so heartfelt and deep and just beautiful. You said something though that really struck me big time. I think that people could really get a huge amount of really self-awareness in this, that it's just business, it's not personal. And I know Michelle and I talk about this all the time. There's Don Miguel Ruiz wrote a book, The Four Agreements, changed my life totally. I know I gave it to Michelle at some point. And the first one is, do not take things personally. We tend to take what other people out there say and do, but we also take ourselves sometimes too personally, thinking that, oh my gosh, this is the end. I'm not as smart as I thought I was. Oh my gosh, I don't even know this. How did I even think that I could do this? And that's why I think we get a little bit nervous before we go in. Because for me, it's not an ego nervous. It's like, I care so much. And I know that's the same about you. Because when we start to get into, we have to be the best at what we're doing when we're going to share this with someone, it's more about my performance than it is about what I'm trying to share, because now you're into your passion and purpose. You were in passion, before. Certainly football is not going to be a purpose. It's an end to a means of learning and growing and becoming exactly who you're meant to be. And I think now you start to put the passion and the purpose together, and it becomes so profound and really so important not to take yourself so seriously as well, because it is just another ordinary lesson or another ordinary day that we're here to learn and grow and become the greatest version of who we are. So I love you so much. I think you are just the most amazing human being. And I am so grateful to meet you, Dr. Des. I think you're extraordinary.
Thank you.
This has been the most amazing conversation. Can we keep going for another hour or two? I want to come up and meet you. I want to come up and see you.
I
It's
think we should. I definitely think
like
we need
so
to do
I love
that.
beautiful.
it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, Michelle, Dr. Des can answer
I
your
love it
question,
too.
Michelle, too. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, what I really loved, Brandon, too, what you said, that, not letting each chapter of your life necessarily define who you are as a person, but you said something so interesting that you look to put yourself in situations where you don't have a limit. In athletics, you can always take it to another level or push yourself or have another goal or ideal for yourself. And even now in this next chapter of your life, you can write your books, you can learn about a new facet and go into the financial, world and learn and grow. And I think that's so cool, Dr. Des, is that, part of the toolbox of kind of having a mindset of not like no limits or really anything is
Yeah, just
possible.
that continued growth mindset when you look into the growth mindset versus fixed mindset literature, like the growth mindset is not having that ceiling, where fixed mindset is you're just kind of riding that natural talent and ability, and you're going to ride it out as far as it gets you. And then once you hit that ceiling, you kind of hit that ceiling. So the growth mindset research is really about being resilient, growing, learning, problem solving, so much. So I encourage your listeners, if they have not looked into Carol Dweck's growth mindset research out of Stanford, it's definitely worth picking up that book. And so that's something that I really incorporate into my work with players. I feel like I have to explain the butter exercise that Brandin.
I'm so
I want to hear
fascinated.
it.
Because I think I didn't have anything to write on, right, Brandin? We were sitting in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Nothing to write on.
Talk about resilience, just pulling in the butter.
Condiments to prove an example. And I forgot about this. So that's a good reminder, Brandin, of this conversation that him and I were having, a deep conversation, as you always will have, or Brandin, is a deep conversation.
Yes.
But it gets at athletic identity. There's a lot of research on athletic identity. And when someone has a really big athletic identity, so if you think about yourself as a circle, and let's say a big portion of that circle is made up of your athletic identity, when that athlete hits failure, a setback, an injury, or let's even say an end of career, they can really struggle because they don't feel like they're failing at their sport. They feel like they're failing at their life. So it's really important to reshape that identity more into characteristics that they will always have with them. Like Brandin, his eagerness to learn and grow, a multi-passionate individual, great with teammates who always want to connect with him and learn with him, and then helping teammates grow and advance themselves. Finding those pieces that you bring into your sport, that your sport nourishes, but then you can take with you when you're gone. Those are the key fundamental pieces of your identity, less so of being a football player, an NFL player, an NBA player, because we know in NFL, like some people say NFL stands for not for long. Like these are short careers. Even if you have a long career, Brandin played for a long time. Like Brandin, how many years did you play?
8.
8 years.
Wow.
That's a longer career in the NFL. The average NFL career is 3.8 years.
Wow.
3.8. So a lot of times on TV, you see those longer careers, but really it could be really short. So how can you learn about yourself and take these skills with you into your next adventure? And that's what Brandin did. Like once NFL was gone, he worked on his next adventure. Now he's doing speaking engagements, children's books, looking into the finance. Like he was able to continue to learn about himself in the league and then take what he learned and help him with his next passion. You could be a multi-passionate person.
Yeah. Oh,
I think that's a really important message for our
So good.
listeners and viewers, because I mean, I am not in this realm and world an expert, but I have to imagine that Brandin might kind of be an exception to the rule of not making their identity sports, or being able to kind of approach that with some balance, because it seems so easy to make your skill a huge part of your identity. So that's such an amazing practice to instill in the athletes, but in people in general. So to kind of wrap up this conversation, even though we could talk for hours, what would you say to someone, whether an athlete or just a person in general, who feels maybe lost at a part in their lives and is seeking a deeper sense of identity, and maybe has placed a lot of importance or value in the external success, and now is feeling a little bit unsure or uncertain of what's next? Like what would you tell them, or what practices or tools would you give them in a chapter like that in their lives?
I'll go.
Dr. Desi, you can go first. Or Brandin, you can, whoever wants to go first.
I think
Question
Barb,
for both.
you used some term that I really paid attention to earlier. It was about the external and internal world. I believe you said that earlier. I think spending more time in your internal space is really important because the external space is pulling at you. So things like journaling, practicing some quietness and stillness, those skills to help just turn that mental flashlight instead of it pointing outwards, more inwards.
Mm,
Therapy and counseling can also be a tool where you're taking time to look at that space. And you could always do therapy and counseling without necessarily something is wrong. A lot of times people, while they're going through major transitions, they need an extra support to help kind of reflect inward, come up with strategies and skills and tools, and then also leaning in on trusted relationships too. When you have trusted people in your life, Brandin, this is an example of it, of all trusted people you've had in your life, so many, that they could be a good support as well. So leaning on trusted people, mentors, different resources like that.
oh, fantastic. You
Love
used
it.
the
And
magic word trust.
Mm-hmm.
It is so important to find those people that you absolutely have really earned your trust, and that you can be vulnerable
Yeah.
and go out and ask them all the questions.
Yeah.
I love what you just, Dr. Des. I can't, like, I could not get enough of you. So I'm so loving just listening to both of you. It's music to my ears.
Yeah.
Same.
And Brandon.
What do you think, Brandon?
so I can, say what works for me. I'm no expert, but I could just talk about my experiences. But I will have to touch on what I said, a moment ago, and that's just, figure out exactly it is what, makes you get up and go, what makes you tick, what makes you jump out of bed, and then, find a way to to do that more. And, whenever I would be in like a funk, like say I was released and, I was out, I was out of the NFL for a while, and you start to feel a little not like yourself. I had to realize, okay, what can I do? Like, what can I control? And, talk about controlling the controllables. And I would have to get up and, I said exercise, strategize, and visualize. Those are the three things I would do. So I would get up, first thing in the morning, rather than just laying in bed waiting for my agent to call me, I would get up and, go on a walk, get outside, get some sunlight. Two, visualize, meditate, breathe, pray, whatever, just something to ground myself. And then three, strategize. What can I do? What can I control? What do I enjoy? What is the plan? While I'm waiting for, this one of 32 general managers to discover my film and give me a call. What can I do in the meantime? What strategy can I implement that will give me a little bit more, a feeling of control over the situation where I'm not just letting my mind wander. So, that was the thing that I think works best for me, and I would encourage anyone to try it.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, I
I
love
love
that,
that.
Brandon.
Yeah, you need to
Yes.
coin that.
Which I hope
Sure.
you have a
Yeah, put it on a
you got a
t-shirt.
book going on that too. I wanted to share one of the things Michelle and I always say in all of the work that we ever do is that we are only always talking from our own experience. We're not
Yeah.
experts of everyone's life. Like, I'm not an expert in your life or Dr. Des or Michelle's. I'm an expert in my own life of what I know that I've experienced to be true and what I've learned and what I'd like to share that work for me. And then I always say, go find your practice and practice it. We're not, so I love, you are an expert in your own life, in your own experiences. And, like owning that, I think people really value that not only are you sharing your learning and your experience and your growth, but you're also giving them permission now to go out and experience their own. You're not trying to tell them what to do, you're showing them what you have done. And to me, every teacher I've ever practiced with or been with, that has been the key thing. I don't necessarily gravitate to people telling me. I had a tough life growing up, so don't tell me what to do. But telling me what to do and telling me it has to be done this certain way. And you're so open, and both of you, like the sharing and the work that you're doing is so vitally necessary. I feel so humbled and so honored to even know the two of you, because I feel my passion is to try to help people become, calm, resilient, passionate, happy, loving, all the things. And so the work that you both are doing is like, I can't even tell you, it's so amazing. So don't sell yourself short on your own experiences, because they're critical. They are the thing,
Yeah,
I believe.
Thank you,
So thank
Barb.
you.
Thank
definitely.
you.
Thank you.
Well,
Oh,
your
thank
your
you.
Yeah,
passions
thank you.
ooze through the screen right now, both Barb and
Oh,
Michelle. So yes,
yes,
You have no idea. You can ask
yes.
all the people that work around us, and you can even ask Michelle. I have been I mean, when Brandin first told me about you, Dr. Des, I was like, oh my gosh. And he kept saying, you have to meet her. You have to meet her, because he knew. And I said, I want to meet her. And I want to meet her. And who knew that we would be in a situation, life brought us here, that we could be on an podcast episode. And it's just amazing. I'm so thrilled.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're helping a lot of people.
Thank you so much, Dr. Des and Brandin, for sharing, your insights and your experiences. I know our listeners and our viewers are going to really gain a lot from this conversation, if they're athletes or if they're not. And so I'm really excited to close out. Do you want to share, Brandin or Dr. Des, where they can find you? Brandin, you've got lots of offerings. So let the people know.
Tell us.
Yeah.
Tell everybody.
So you can find me and my two children's books. Targeted age is K through 5, kindergarten through 5th grade, at brandinsbooks.com. And my social media handle is also Brandin's Books.
These books are so when Brandin first read, I just have to give you one more plug. When you first read that book to me, he's like a mix of Mr. Rogers and Dr. Seuss. But the most magical thing is your own personality comes out so strong in those books. Brandin, your love and your caring and your thoughtfulness, I cannot say enough about your writing. I love it.
Thank you.
I give it to everybody I know.
And he incorporates growth mindset into his books.
Yes.
Subtle nod to growth mindset. Brandin does a great job of that.
Yes.
Thank
You can see, Dr. Des, you can see your practice and your teachings and your expertise and your experiences. You can see it in Brandin's growth and in his continual learning and growing and becoming. You can see it so much now that I've had this, we talked before a little bit, but now that I've had this hour or so to talk with you, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. I can't thank you enough for being you. You can really see your teachings and your passion for caring about these athletes from the inside out and not just from the outside in. Yeah, it's really a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. Likewise, and it always helps me when a player has a positive experience at the collegiate level that they bring over to the professional space. It just helps me out so much more. So thank you.
I love it. Well, thank you so much again, and we look forward to chatting with you all again soon. Thanks everyone for listening and watching.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're loving our episodes, make sure you're subscribed to Life Happens Podcast on YouTube. And if you're listening, make sure you're liked and subscribed on Apple, Spotify, and Google. If you haven't yet, give us a rating and a 5-star review. It's so helpful to us and to the show. If you haven't yet, you can subscribe to our Substacks via the links in our show notes. And it would mean so much to me if you pre-ordered my very first book, Dear Friend, out this November. You can check out more at thedearfriendbook.com.